quick show of hands, how many of you use or are responsible for a managed file transfer within your organization? Okay, great. And how many of you use protocols like SFTP, FTP, okay, and maybe even AS2 for business-to-business communication use cases? Okay, great. And then any of you from an application development team who need access to data from different data sources, and that's why you're here? Okay, all right. And then finally, any of our partners here helping our customers build MFT? Anyone from the partner organization? Okay, nice. All right, great. Look, you guys are all in the right place because today Smitha, and my colleague Russ Boyer, we're here to help you build a cloud-native managed file transfer so that you can eliminate all the overhead and management of secure file transfer while also maintaining your compliance needs and then most importantly, removing data silos between diverse data sets. A quick run through the agenda, right? I know it's kind of packed, so I'm going to move a little bit pace it up, right? First, I'll briefly talk about why do you use an MFT and some of the key use cases that hopefully it'll resonate with you and it's your use case, right? And then I'll talk about cloud-native MFT, why that's becoming even more and more important, right? If not a requirement as your business grows and for you to keep up with those critical business needs. We'll then Russ will deep dive into a few features that underpins our AWS Transfer Family's MFT offering. And then he has a demo, maybe 2 demos, I'm not sure, 1 or 2, so he keeps a little surprise there for us. And I'm also really excited, like you're the first few folks I'm telling that we just launched a new service called AWS B2B Data Interchange for EDI. So we'll talk a little bit about that, not a whole lot. There's a session tomorrow where we'll go more deep into that. Finally, we'll wrap it up, right, with some, and leave some time for Q&A. All right, so just a little bit stepping back to the basics, right? Like what's one of the biggest motivation to moving your applications to the cloud, right? What we've heard from customers is data, right? Being able to use that data more intelligently, putting that data into work, right? Data that's generated from applications that reside within your environment or your business partner's environment. How do you make most out of that data? And to do that, you need a strong data strategy, right? And there are 3 elements for you to build a strong data architecture, right? One is being able to access the right set of tools for analysis, right, for your own business use case. So you want that tool set to be comprehensive, right? Second one is integrated, all the connectivity options, right, all the protocols, so you can access that data sets no matter where they are, how they're interfaced. You want accessibility to those data sets. And third is governance, especially if you're part of your organization's Cloud Center of Excellence. You want to make sure best practices, guidelines, and governance policies can be implemented end-to-end. And as part of that, there are a few key pillars in a modern data architecture as you build out that architecture in the cloud, right? All of that you see around the circle, these are your modern data applications, right, that need access to the core, to your data lake, right? In order to do that, you need your data lake to scale. Right? If your data lake doesn't scale, exponentially your data grows, and then your cost grows, and you just kind of can't keep up with it, right? And you want purpose-built data lake services, as you can see around that circle, right? Whether it's your data scientist who needs access to SageMaker, or your business analyst needs access to a relational database, or maybe you have a business user who wants quick site dashboard. So you want access to all these different services and that caters to different personas within your organization. Seamless data movement. Make sure data gets to where it can be on time, securely, right? Performant and cost effective, right? Again, like I mentioned, your business is growing, data is increasing. How do you maintain that same level of performance and keep up with growing costs? And most importantly, governance, making sure the right people have the right level of access, right? And you have proper auditing controls around it. In this session today, I'll focus more on seamless data movement, right? How do you move data securely? Some of the common use cases for MFT, again, I don't think this is an exhaustive list, right? Just some common use cases. First one, we hear from customers who need to move regulated data, right? Whether it's subject to PII, HIPAA, right? Whether you're on financial services, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, utilities. There's a lot of data that needs to be, that's subject to compliance, right? That needs that MFT's security. ERP integration, you're using SAP as your ERP and you're cutting purchase orders, right, to your suppliers, or you're receiving shipping notifications, inventory reports. So all of this, that's part of that your ERP needs or ERP needs to send to a business partner. Content distribution, right? You probably provide value-added data sets to a customer, right? How do you share them? How do you increase your reach of subscribers and make sure your subscriber can only access data that they've paid for, right? IoT, you may have devices. You're a manufacturer. You have devices out there. How do you get all that telemetry data without changing those devices into your data lake and then act on that data? So like I said, these are some common use cases. Again, not exhaustive, just for us to get started talking about them. So speaking with customers, there are a few trends, and I'd say challenges, and a trend can be an opportunity, or a trend can be a challenge, right, depending on how you see it. There are a few trends that we're hearing in the field of MFT, right? The first one is increasing data security and visibility, right? Off late, there have been security attacks, ransomware attacks, and some of these attackers are getting more and more sophisticated, right? How do you keep your MFT architecture protected from such attacks, right? Exchanging data, where the world is becoming even more connected. How do you get access to protocols so that you meet your business partner where they are, right? And also, there's also regulations that your data is subject to. So how do you use the right protocol that, that helps you meet that regulation? And then, like I said, a data set can reside inside your organization or outside. How do you leverage all of that data so that you get a full picture of your business? And fourthly, and most importantly, how can you do all of this while lowering costs, increasing resiliency, scalability, and lowering the operational overhead of managing your MFT? As many of you may have heard, pets and cattle, right? How do you make that a cattle so that you nurture the pets that are core competency for your business? And that's exactly why we launched the service. Like 5 years ago at re:Invent, we launched AWS Transfer Family. The idea was we started with support for SFTP and have expanded into multiple protocols, storage services, and features that we'll talk more in this session. See, the goal here is we want to help IT teams deliver MFT without incurring that operational overhead, right, and meet compliance. And we want you to benefit for this workload from cloud scale, availability, resiliency, security, and pay-as-you-go pricing, right? Transfer Family integrates with cloud storage, which means your data is natively stored in Amazon S3 and Amazon EFS so that you could use it with your development tools for application and analytics integration. Again, this diagram, I like this diagram because it shows the three-pronged benefits that we drive our tenets behind it, right? The first one, as I mentioned, no infrastructure, no server for you to manage. You get a server, but it's infrastructure as code that you can manage it, right? The second one is we've invested a lot into features where you don't have to change the way you integrate with your business partner. They use SFTP, you have a certain IP, you have a certain host key, so you can keep that interface the same as you migrate. So as far as your business partners are concerned, it's just the same interface for them, right? And thirdly, this is the benefit of moving to the cloud, is now that data available, you can, your application development teams can build out their data lakes and analytics on this data, right? Use a glue crawler. I mean, the possibilities become endless once that data is in cloud storage. So We launched the service with a managed server, right, as many of you may have heard. And this year, we added what we call SFTP connectors. So SFTP connectors is a managed SFTP client that you get, right, to access remote servers and move data stored in between, in remote servers to Amazon S3 and vice versa. So the idea is you're accessing an SFTP server using a cloud API. So again, as you can see, like you need SFTP, you're using SFTP, but you don't need to deal with SFTP, right? How magical is that? And then, so that gives us, with that, we say, hey, look, what is an MFT? It's bidirectional data movement, right? You need a server, you get a server. You need a client, you get a client, right? And the two big personas that we talk about or talk to are one are those who are in a cloud center of excellence, need to make sure their organization, those who need secure file sharing, are meeting all the compliance requirements, doing it securely, working within the network bounds that they need to work through, right? And then you have the line of business developers, right, who need this data, right? They rely on a business partner to get that data for whatever business purpose that they're building their application for. Tens and thousands of customers, right? I want to say thank you, are using Transfer Family today. And as you can see from the logo, they're all across the world, across a variety of industries, right? And one specific customer I want to zoom into, and I personally worked with this customer, right? And they came to us saying, hey, look, we're using a legacy on-premises solution today, right? And it's not scaling with our business, right? We're incurring security risks, and it's again, a lot of maintenance for this solution, and we're doing all of this while, our licensing costs are only increasing, right? And then when we look back, we're like, we get all these new use cases, and this solution just doesn't have those features, right? Help us, right? And that was a great opportunity for me and my team to work with them to say, hey, look, Transfer Family can help, right? So Regeneron built their own file transfer service that they call RTS using AWS Transfer Family, right? And now that solution is used by their internal users and thousands of external users. And think these are like if you're in pharmaceuticals, you have clinical research organizations, hospitals, insurance providers, et cetera, right? All of them using their file transfer service built on AWS Transfer Family. And what they liked was it gives them the flexibility to either use a web client or an SFTP client, so they can meet that business partner where they are, right? They can authenticate either using passwords or SSH keys, so they get a lot of these benefits of the features that we're building automatically as part of their file transfer service. And the most satisfying part of this was the outcome, right? They saved, right, up to 80%, right, on their overall cost, and specifically on storage, up to 90%. Just imagine that for a file transfer service that's more feature-rich, more scalable, and compliant, right? Obviously, they got a robust and scalable file exchange service that's also compliant with what's called GXP procedures, which is specific to the pharma industry. If you're in the business of producing food or medicine or medical devices, it's super important to follow this compliance requirement. Just thought I'd share, if you want to read more, there's a blog post link here, about their story. And look, for many of you who do not have in-house development teams, we have a list of delivery partners, right? And they have an expertise in using Transfer Family to build, manage file transfer. So here they are to help you, as part of this journey. Cool. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Russ, who'll do a deep dive into some of the features that underpin AWS Transfer Family's MFT.
All right, this time, I'm the feedback guy, apparently, so I apologize for that. I think it's because I talk too loud. So I wanted to walk you through a few features of Transfer Family. If you're going to build an MFT solution on Transfer Family, it's going to include Transfer Family, but you're also going to need a variety of other services to build something that might be the equivalent of an MFT that you would use on premises. So at the basic level, I want to just cover what's happening here. We are moving files with protocols from business to business. And as part of moving those files from business to business, we need to be able to authenticate and authorize the users. that are going to log in and regulate what they're going to be able to see, and make sure we have really tight access controls in that regard. We need to be able to automate pulling data out. If it's cloud native, you don't want to just land static files in a bucket and let them sit around and wait. Why not go ahead and do things with those files? Why not take advantage of the automation that cloud brings and go ahead and extract value from those files right away? And you need to have good visibility, centralized logging all in one place. And that is a key to your governance and compliance. If you don't have that, if you can't tell the compliance people what you've been doing, probably going to be in trouble. So we divide our key pillars for AWS Transfer Family along these same lines. So we have connectivity, that's our main pillar. We need to have a variety of protocols. We're always looking to add more protocols. In fact, if you want to see Smitha and I after the session and suggest a protocol, we'd love to hear from you. We need to be able to ensure that you can provide network security, and we'll take a deeper dive on that here in a moment. Connectors was a big addition for us in July of this year. We launched the ability to do that managed client, and I'll show you that in a demo here in a few minutes. And then, I do want to point out, some of these are native built-in capabilities, and then also layered solutions that we have that exist out there in our blog channel, in our workshops, that can help you build anything that you see in orange here. As far as authentication and access, we have a massive variety of ways that you can authenticate your users, and then we have robust tools for ensuring that each user only sees what they should. And then as far as, do you need to bring your own identity? I'm sure you're using some kind of LDAP or maybe some external solution like Okta. Raise your hand if you're using a third-party identity solution today. Yeah. So we need the ability to be able to support those, and we have that. We'll get into that a little bit deeper as well. With automation, you need event-driven architectures. When a file comes in, you may want to do something to it, like scan it to ensure that it's safe to use. So we'll dive a little deeper on that in a moment. We're hearing from customers in different geographies that are saying that, starting next year, if they receive files from third parties, they have to scan it. It's part of their regulatory compliance. So we're always looking to enhance the story there. Maybe you're pre-encrypting your files and you need to be able to decrypt your files. We have that built in as well. And then we're going to log everything out to CloudWatch. We are going to, from there, be able to provide you with some log insights and some ability to create dashboards so you can keep up with what's happening in your MFT. So I just want to dive really deep into how SFTP connectors work. So a connector is ultimately a CLI or API that you can call. And what's happening when you call that is you're either sending files out, you can specify a list of files to send out, you can specify a list of files to retrieve. So this is a managed client operation. And those files are going to either be persisted into S3 after we've retrieved them from wherever you told us to get them from, or they're going to be pulled from S3 and sent out. So, customer scenario, this is sort of similar to a real world experience that I've had with MFT in the financial services industry. You've got an application, it's feeding data in over SFTP. This is really common. How many of you are using SFTP because it provides this broad range of access to like multiple operating systems? It's kind of like a Rosetta Stone if anybody's using it that way. So this is where customers really appreciate, we talk about SFTP, don't want to age anybody in here, including myself, but it is a 38-year-old protocol. We're still talking about it. Everybody still uses SFTP. It's amazing to me, these new use cases that we hear about every single year that goes by. And we hear about we need to get the file in. We need to do some sort of automated processing to it. We need to enrich the data, and then we need to send it back out to our business partners. And that's exactly where connectors will come in. You call connector over an API or a CLI. It's available to use with API-driven architectures like step functions so that you can send files out. So on the server side, you need to be able to authenticate your users. And we offer a variety of authentication methodologies. We have service-managed users. These are built right into the service for simple key-based authentication. We also offer a direct integration with AWS Directory Services. So that's managed AD or AD connector, if you're familiar with that. So you can just grab your domain right there in the console and pick it and use that to authorize your users for Transfer Family as well. And then we have custom IDP. And the custom IDP ultimately is using a Lambda function. You can call that Lambda function either directly or you can call it over an API gateway. The advantage of using the API gateway is it gives you the ability to insert a WAF in front of that API gateway. You can do some interesting things like adaptive blocking, things like that. So, or you can just call the Lambda directly if you don't need that WAF or if you choose to leverage a different type of network security. Also, recently we launched what we call multi-method authentication. So multi-method authentication is simply the ability to choose from a variety of options when you configure your Transfer Family server. You can take an existing server and change it to take advantage of this. So this will allow you to select from passwords or keys or passwords and keys. This is based on open source standard. So effectively, you would pass the key with the initial authentication request, and then the server will still prompt for a password. And I'll show you that in the demo here in a minute. If you're going to distribute data sets at scale, you've got a whole bunch of objects sitting in S3, and you need for a user to be able to log in and only see specific objects, only see specific prefixes, and without proper data security, obviously you're creating risk in your organization. Also, in order to seamlessly migrate from another platform or solution, you need the ability to, select from those data sources and really zoom in to what the end user needs to see. And what we really see a lot of is publisher and subscriber. Actually, the demo I'm going to do here in a minute is based on that concept, publisher-subscriber concept. So you have a user that's authorized to log in, upload a file, and other users that are authorized to log in and consume those files. You don't want to have to do a lot of manual processing to make all of that work. And what you really don't want to do is create a whole bunch of copies of those files to make it work either. So we'll dive in here and talk about the different ways that we're able to secure data. We start at an IAM policy level. So every user that authenticates gets mapped to an IAM role. That role will have a trust for AWS Transfer Family. And then, say you have a user that needs to log in and you only want them to see, a specific set of prefixes. Well, you could end up having to create thousands of IAM roles. And for customers, that became, kind of difficult to manage on scale. So we also have the ability to support underlying mechanisms like S3 access points. So if you're familiar with S3 access points, gives you the ability to use that in line with what we call logical directories. A logical directory is a pretty simple concept. It's like, think of it sort of like a symlink. It's not a symlink. But what it is a friendly name that points to a specific location in S3 where you have data that you want those users to see. So when a user logs in, if you want them to see certain folders, you're able to use this logical directory mapping in conjunction with the IAM role that they map to control what they see. So the IAM role will set the top level of access, and then from there you zoom into the specific prefixes, specific folders using logical directories. Logical directories automatically, as a feature, cheroots the user so that it can only get to, you can't elevate out of that set of folders. So even if the IAM role sets a scope of access that's larger, you're not going to be able to get out of the folders that you're in. When you log in, you're only going to see the folders that are mapped. And I'll show you that and how that works in a moment. So network security is, it's the hottest topic that we have going. People are looking to secure their networks in a variety of ways. And Transfer Family, when we launched, it's a public endpoint. So you're able to come in from the internet over a host name, and we use that host name to provide for failover. We use that host name to provide for load balancing. That host name is how we keep the service able to scale and able to provide high availability. But, customers pretty quickly after we launched said, we really don't want just anybody to be able to reach our Transfer Family server. You want to be able to control that access in more fine grain. So we introduced what's called a VPC endpoint. So now Transfer Family creates a service-managed VPC endpoint right inside of your VPC, and that can be internet-facing. You can pick which elastic IPs you want to bind to whatever internal IPs, and then across up to 3 AZs, we will provide that failover. Again, we're still just using the host name to provide that failover, that high availability, and that scalability. But, maybe you don't want to expose it to the internet at all. Maybe you just have internal pipelines that need to SFTP. A lot of people raised their hands when we talked about legacy workloads that you're using SFTP as like an easy widget to get your data off of those, including IoT devices and things like that. And here you can just set up an internal endpoint, and that internal endpoint can be reached from anything that can route those networks from your internal, so maybe that's over a VPN connection, or maybe it's over Direct Connect. However you want to get the data there, it's just going to create that endpoint inside of the VPC of your choosing, using whatever subnets you choose as well. Now, you might want to insert something like a network firewall, and a network firewall could certainly be inserted in front of that VPC hosted endpoint. You can just use the security group of the VPC if you want to, and then regulate who can get to it that way. But there is a limit to the number of lines in a rule set to your security group, and you might want to look at something like network firewall if you need to go beyond that limit. So this, actually 2 weeks ago, we released a new feature for customers who, by regulation, and we keep encountering more customers that by regulation are not allowed to listen over standard ports. They need to, in order to satisfy some sort of compliance or regulation, they need to be able to listen over a non-standard port. So we launched 2 weeks ago the ability for a VPC hosted server to listen over port 2222 or port 22 or both. It's really up to you how you want to configure it. And when you set it up that way, the client will have to be configured to hit it over port 2222. This just gives you a little bit of security through obscurity, if you're familiar with the term, some way of keeping people who are just scanning on common ports from finding your server and trying to log into it. So we'll get into this in depth in the demo, but automated processing MFT data with workflows. So we have built-in workflows on a Transfer Family server that you can attach. You can do a variety of pre-built things. You can make a copy of the file. Maybe you want to make an archive copy really quickly. Maybe you want to scan that file. We'll talk about that in a moment. Or maybe you need to PGP decrypt that file as it comes in because it's been pre-encrypted, and that's your regulation. Your regulation says all files will be encrypted. A lot of customers are getting their files PGP pre-encrypted. So with managed workflows, you're able to do interesting things like make that archive copy automatically. This is just a simple setup inside the Transfer Family console. You can set it up to decrypt that file. That file decryption can either be done with a top-level key at the server level, or you can have a different key for each user. So when the files come in and they're pre-encrypted, you can decrypt them automatically and then stage them out to a different S3 location from there. And then you can do custom workflows. And a custom workflow is going to call a Lambda function, and that Lambda function can kick off any pipeline you want. In the demo in a moment, I'll show you a custom workflow that does a ClamAV antivirus scan that is available on GitHub, as well as in our blog channel as a CloudFormation template that you can download and deploy in your own environment. And now, fresh today, we did release a new service, and that service is AWS B2B Data Interchange. I just wanted to highlight really quickly, B2B Data Interchange is an EDI service that does document transformations from EDI document formats automatically to either XML or JSON. You have the ability to create customized transformers. It is not mandatory that you use Transfer Family to deliver data to B2B Data Interchange, but you can use Transfer Family to deliver data to B2B Data Interchange, or you can land that data in S3 through whatever mechanism you choose. Ultimately, if you were using AWS Transfer Family, you'd have a trading partner that would be sending you files over AS2 or any other protocol. Really, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be AS2. It's just the most common one we run into with EDI. That data will automatically trigger in the bucket an event bridge rule that is service managed, and that event bridge rule will go ahead and feed that file into data interchange, which will optionally map that data, or it'll just do a wholesale transform of that data into XML or JSON, where you can feed it into your other pipelines, such as perhaps your data lake with a glue crawler, or maybe you're using AppFlow to feed that directly into your ERP. All right, because no presentation would be complete without a live demo that could go terribly wrong. I know a lot of you are here. You might have been here last year when my demo did go terribly wrong, but we recovered before the end, and we're going to figure out if we're, here comes the adventure. But in today's demo, I am going to be doing a bidirectional MFT flow. What's going to happen on the front end is I'm going to publish some data. I'm going to be using Amazon Cognito as my authentication mechanism, and I am going to show you how that all works. And then I'm going to do some processing of those files using workflows. That processing is going to include PGP decrypting the file, so we'll look at that in depth. I'm going to load that file into S3, and then I'm going to simulate, logging in as a subscriber and downloading the file, some of the access control mechanisms that we have, just so you can see what that's like. But I'm also going to do a connector call, and that connector call, if all goes well, is going to automatically send that file out to a third party, where it will be automatically published to a website. We'll see if this all works. All right, can everybody see the screen? I've got it zoomed in. All right, thank you very much. All right, so I have a Transfer Family server created here, and I just wanted to show you really quickly. I'm using a custom Lambda. I am just calling the Lambda directly in this case. And this custom Lambda is an authorizer that is going to authenticate the user against Cognito. So I'm going to use a Cognito user pool as a part of this architecture. So really quickly, I'll step over to this user pool, and I'll show you I've got a couple of personas pre-created. You'll notice it says force change password. I'm taking advantage of a little quirk with Cognito. It will allow the user to log in for about 5 hours after you create it. And then after that, it'll all blow up. So hopefully it hasn't been too long. If it has, I'll recreate the user really quick. But we need to be able to regulate access for these users. Just authenticating them, that's not really going to do a lot. Sure, it's going to make sure that nobody without a password can't log in, but it's not going to actually zoom into what specific data that these users need to access. So this particular authenticator actually uses a set of DynamoDB tables to hold the access records so that you can authorize users into specific folders or specific products in this case. So we have 3 tables here, and we'll go explore table items really quick on these, and we'll see that we essentially have 3 product folders. Each of these product folders represents a data product that a publisher might be publishing. And then we have user product mappings. So if we explore those table items, what we'll see is that each user has a representation in this table of what folders they have access to, and then also what their relationship with that folder is. So we're taking advantage of a feature of Transfer Family called a session policy. And what a session policy allows you to do is, beyond just your logical directory mappings, you can actually pass additional IAM-based S3 access rules in a single session that layer in on top of the default IAM rule. So this allows you, with logical directory mappings, sure, the user is going to be rooted, but sometimes we run into customers that have regulation or compliance that demands that they be able to demonstrate that each user only had very specific S3 access, like in the S3 access logs. So this will affect that level of granularity when the user logs in. In this case, we're going to pass the session policy. I'm going to go ahead and log in here as Jane. You notice I have a little cheat sheet to make sure that I don't have to type all these commands out. The drama builds. But I did log in. I managed to authenticate. Not sure why it was so slow. I'm going to blame the reInvent network. So if I log in as Jane, you'll notice that I have access to a home directory that is just named my username. That is affected by logical directory mapping. You can just do $transfer user as a construct there, and it'll automatically capture the username and render that into the mapping. That does not mean that your prefix has to have a folder named Jane, by the way. It could be named whatever you want it to be. And then we've got publish and subscribe. So if we go into publish, we'll see all of the data products that Jane has access to publish. And in this case, it's credit and equities. And that's driven by that DynamoDB table that I showed you at the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the equities folder. And I want to go ahead and upload a file that I've got that is PGP pre-encrypted. All right, so I've uploaded the file. I'm going to go back to the Transfer Family server configuration really quickly. I will scroll down and show you that I have a workflow attached here. And if I look at the configuration of that workflow, the first step is to decrypt that file. And so if we go back and we're still logged in as that user, I should be able to do a quick ls. And you notice that the GPG file extension is gone. That's because we have decrypted the file and staged it back out unencrypted. So that file came in encrypted. We were able to PGP decrypt it automatically. And now it's staged out and published for a subscriber to pick up. So I'm going to go ahead and log out as Jane, and I'm going to log in as John. And as I'm logged in as John, and I can do an ls. Again, I see the same folder structure, publish, subscribe, and I'm going to go to subscribed here. John is actually a subscriber of the equities product, and if I go into the equities product, I'm able to download that file that I uploaded earlier. Just wanted to show you really quickly. The files are out here, and I can pull them down. Now, I am a subscriber of this folder, so I just want to show you really quickly that if I try to put a file here, a test file, for example, I'm unable to. That is because the session policy has rendered my access to be read-only to this folder. So while I mapped to it with logical directory mapping, I'm able to see it, the session policy regulates that I can't actually do anything in this folder besides download. So that's a publisher and a subscriber. You know, there are two individual users. They're logging in over a server protocol with a client, and they're either publishing a file or they're subscribed to the file and they're downloading it. But what if you have a customer that's big enough to say, hey, I don't have time to come get that file from you. You got to send it to me. You know, that's what I want. And, you know, in the financial service industry that I come from, that was a lot of customers that would say, no, I want you to send me a file. And so I wanted to go ahead and show you how Connectors works. And one thing I wanted to show you really quickly before I did that was what a connector configuration looks like. So in this case, I've pre-created a connector that points at a transfer family server in another region. That's just to simulate the idea that I'm sending it to an external server. And one thing I wanted to draw your attention to is I have this server listening over port 2222. So if you look at the configured target, I'm hitting that server. I just throw a simple :2222, and it's able to reach out over an alternate port. We don't limit what alternate ports on the outbound side. Whatever your downstream server's listening on, you can plug it in there. And you need access to login credentials. Transfer Family will retrieve those login credentials from Secrets Manager where they're safely stored as a secret. So ultimately, when you configure a connector, you're going to be configuring the target downstream, what secret holds the login details, and then a role that gives you access to basically Secrets Manager and the S3 location that you want to actually land data in when you execute the connector command. So you can use a connector to either send files out or to retrieve files. In this case, I'm going to use a connector. I'm going to send some files out. But before I send those files out, I wanted to go and show you really quickly the Transfer Family server downstream. And the reason I thought it was interesting for you to see that is this Transfer Family server that I've got configured also has a workflow attached to it. And that workflow is going to do a custom step that does a ClamAV-based antivirus scan as I load it over. So let me go ahead and execute this send file. So as part of this send file operation, essentially I have just called asynchronously the transfer family fleet. So that's a really important point. I get back a transfer ID immediately. This command does not sit and wait for the transfer to be completed. It will add that as a job. That transfer ID is how you're going to keep up with whether or not the transfer was successfully completed. All of the logging that's going to happen unique to that particular file transfer is going to reference that transfer ID and CloudWatch as well. So if we go look at the Transfer Family server, it's actually configured to hit an authentication provider that's based on Secrets Manager. And what I wanted to show you was it's both a password and a public key. So if I log into that server directly as the user, I have to specify the port 2222 in order to do so. And you'll notice that I'm calling a key-based authentication here, but the server still prompts me for a password. And that's because I'm using that password and key option that we released a few weeks ago. And of course, at least once I'll have to type a password wrong. So we see our file, it got uploaded over here. And if we go look over into S3 and actually look at this file, oops. We see our file there, and if I go and I select that file and scroll down, you'll see that I have applied a tag based on the successful antivirus scan that says it's clean. So you could, keep up with that. You could put a bucket policy on this bucket that denies access to files that aren't listed as clean with this tag. There's all kinds of ways that you could then regulate who can access the file, and if the file is not safe to use, prevent people from accessing it. So I just wanted to show you really quickly, in addition to that, I had that workflow staging that file out into a folder where it's just automatically going to load into CloudFront and get served out. So this would be, kind of a bidirectional workflow that we've seen with customers. They need to be able to load files in, they need to process those files, they need to send those files back out, and then the automation on the other end, they're getting files from third parties, they need to be able to do, some sort of scan to ensure the data is safe to use, and then automatically include those in their pipelines. And these are the kinds of things that you can do with MFT on Transfer Family. And since you're the first group that I have spoken to since we released our B2B feature, I did want to really quickly show you that Transfer Family. I have a connector configured here, and this connector is set up to send data out over AS2. And this is just to simulate a send operation from a third party who might be sending you EDI files in a supply chain relationship. And I've got this Transfer Family server set up to listen on AS2 as well. And if I execute this command, I'm going to send a file through. So we also support AS2 as a connector type. We can send out over AS2 and we can send out over SFTP. This is definitely the highest demand protocols that we've seen. And then if we go and we look in our B2B data interchange console, and we specifically look at the trading capability we have set up, we can see again that we're landing data in S3. And if the data comes in and lands in an inbound bucket that's pre-configured, we're going to do a transformation of it. And if all has gone well, I should be able to scroll down here and see a little activity. And yes, I do see that I transformed my file. So I just wanted to really quickly show you the new product. Since it's brand new, you're the first that got to see it work live. Had nothing to do really with the MFT demonstration, but I thought you might be interested. So that is all for my demo. All right. Really quickly, I was going to recap that B2B demo architecture that I walked through. And now I'm going to hand it back to Smitha and let her wrap it up.
I use MFT. I have MFT use cases, right? And in STG322, I heard that a cloud-native MFT architecture will help my business grow, right, for my use case, right, and the industry I operate in, right? And I've learned that cloud-native MFT right, is becoming ever important, right? It saves costs, operational overhead, and AWS Transfer Family can help me migrate this important workload. Please, we want to be able to help you. So, if you're wondering like which regions we're in all commercial regions, all AWS commercial regions, China regions, and 2 GovCloud regions. We're also certified like the standard compliance certifications, PCI, HIPAA eligible, FedRAMP High, moderate, et cetera. Like the compliances in scope page will tell you all the certifications that the service has to meet your needs. And look, you just saw the demo. If you want to do that yourself in your own account live, we have a couple of workshops, STG330 tomorrow, and also STG354 if you want to even try out the EDI transformer. Would love to see you there, more hands-on experience. We also have a chalk talk my colleagues are running to do architectural discussion on Thursday, STG321, and tomorrow's the breakout for the new AWS B2B data interchange service. So we'd love to see you again if you have time. Also, once you leave, if you want more information, more videos, we have the SFTP connector video. We have a ton of blog posts to go into different solutions and scenarios, depending on what you want to build. And then there's our main marketing page that'll be a good starting for a ton of more resources for you to learn more about Transfer Family. And look, and as you continue on your storage learning journey, there are badges and courses that you can take and keep up with different storage innovations that we're launching every year. Cool, thank you. Thank you for your time, and we'll open it up for Q&A.